Emma Barrett stood frozen in her childhood living room, the lawyer's words still echoing in her ears. The reading of her mother's will had been even worse than she'd expected. "I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Mr. Finley," her mother's attorney for over 30 years, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. "The entirety of Margaret Barrett's estate, including the family home, investments and personal effects, is bequeathed to her daughter, Jessica Barrett Reynolds." Jessica, seated on the sofa across from Emma, had the decency to look uncomfortable. Though Emma noticed she didn't seem particularly surprised. "There must be some mistake," Emma said, her heart pounding. "Dad always said—" "I assure you, the will is legally binding," Mr. Finley interrupted, his tone gentle but firm. "Your mother was of sound mind when she signed it 3 years ago." Emma glanced at Jessica, who was staring at her wedding ring, twisting it around her finger. "Jess, did you know about this?" Jessica's eyes, so like their mother's, finally met hers. "I didn't know specifics, but Mom mentioned changes." Emma felt the room closing in. 3 decades of being the responsible daughter, postponing her dreams to help with the family business, while Jessica chased adventure in California, and this was her reward. "Well," she swallowed hard. "Congratulations, Jess. You've finally won Mom's ultimate approval." "Emma, don't—" "I should go." Emma grabbed her purse, nodding curtly to Mr. Finley. "Thank you for your time." Outside, the Michigan autumn air hit, her face cooling the angry tears threatening to spill. She fumbled for her car keys, cursing when they slipped from her trembling fingers. "Emma, wait," Jessica called, hurrying down the porch steps. "Please, we need to talk about this, now." "You want to talk? Where was this concern when you were convincing Mom to cut me out? I swear, I had no idea she'd leave you nothing." Jessica's designer boots crunched on fallen leaves. "This isn't right. We can figure something out." Emma laughed bitterly. "Always the magnanimous one, aren't you? No, thank you. I don't need your charity." "It's not charity. It's fairness. You were here. I wasn't. I know that." The phone rang 3 times before Emma answered, her voice hollow. "Hello? Ms. Barrett, this is Timothy Finley again. I apologize for the intrusion, but there's been a development." A pause. "Your father left a letter with my office, with instructions to deliver it to you and your sister, only in the event that your mother's will proceeded as it did." Emma's grip tightened on the phone. "What letter?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss its contents. Both you and Mrs. Reynolds need to be present. Would tomorrow at 10 be convenient?" The next morning, Emma arrived 15 minutes early, determined to maintain composure. The office hadn't changed in years. Same leather chairs, same dusty law. Books, same faint smell of pipe tobacco, though Mr. Finley had quit decades ago. Jessica arrived precisely at 10, looking impeccable, yet exhausted. "Hi," she said, hovering uncertainly before taking the seat beside Emma. Mr. Finley placed a sealed envelope on the desk. "Your father entrusted this to me 17 years ago, shortly before his passing. He was quite specific about the circumstances under which it should be revealed." Emma stared at the envelope, her father's handwriting instantly recognizable, bold strokes, slightly tilted to the right. A wave of grief, fresh as the day he died, washed over her. "Would you like privacy?" Mr. Finley asked. Jessica spoke first. "Please." When the door closed behind him, neither sister moved to take the envelope. "You should open it," Jessica said finally. "You were always his favorite." Emma bristled. "That's not true." "Come on, Em. The fishing trips, teaching you to run the hardware store, the special nicknames. He adored you." "He loved us both," Emma insisted, though memories of those father-daughter moments made her heart ache. "Besides, Mom more than made up for it with her preference for you." Jessica flinched. "That's not fair, isn't it? The perfect daughter who escaped small-town life for big-city success. Every phone call, every visit, she'd remind me how well You were doing how proud she was of you, while critiquing every choice I made, Jessica countered. Nothing was ever good enough. Emma blinked in surprise. What? My marriage? My career? She always had some comment, Jessica continued, her voice quivering. Why I didn't have children yet, why I changed jobs, why my house wasn't bigger. Emma shook her head. She bragged about you constantly. To you, maybe. To me, she just pushed for more. Jessica's eyes welled with tears. I honestly thought when I saw the will that it was one final manipulation, her way of forcing us to fight even after she's gone. The revelation hung between them. Two daughters who'd grown up in the same house but experienced entirely different mothers. Emma reached for the envelope. Her fingers traced her father's handwriting. For my daughters when they need it most. Together, she asked. Jessica nodded. Emma broke the seal and unfolded the letter, dated just weeks before their father's sudden heart attack. As they read in silence, both sisters' expressions shifted from curiosity to shock. My dearest girls, it began. If you're reading this, your mother has done exactly what I feared. She's used her will as a weapon, continuing the pattern that damaged our family for too long. I've spent years trying to shield you both from the truth, hoping your mother would eventually change. She won't. Margaret's own childhood left her unable to love two people equally. She creates competition where there should be none. Emma, you stayed close, sacrificing opportunities to help the family. Jessica, you needed distance to become your own person. Both choices were valid. Both of you are extraordinary, and I've been proud of you every day. What your mother has done isn't about love. It's about control. She wants Jessica to feel guilty for receiving everything and Emma to feel rejected for receiving nothing. She wants you fighting over her estate rather than supporting each other. I couldn't challenge her directly without risking both relationships, so I made my own arrangements. The building housing Barrett Hardware isn't part of your mother's estate, because it isn't in her name. I transferred ownership to Lakeside Trust 15 years ago, with both of you as equal beneficiaries upon Margaret's passing. The trust also contains my personal savings and investments, roughly equal in value to the house and remainder of Margaret's estate. This way, neither of you is left without inheritance, regardless of your mother's decisions. Emma and Jessica stared at each other, speechless. Their father, always the peacemaker, had anticipated their mother's actions and quietly created a safety net. "Did you know?" Jessica whispered. Emma shook her head. "Not a clue. The store, I've been running it thinking it would eventually go to you. I can't believe she did this," Jessica said, wiping her eyes. "Or that Dad knew she would." Emma returned to the letter, reading aloud. "My greatest regret is that I didn't do more to break this cycle while I was alive. I tried to counterbalance your mother's treatment of you both, which perhaps only confused things further. I'm sorry for my part in this dysfunction. My deepest wish is that you'll use this moment to rebuild your relationship as sisters, without Margaret's influence driving you apart. The inheritance is split fairly now, but true wealth comes from having each other's support. All my love. Forever, Dad." Emma lowered the letter, her hands trembling. Memories reframed themselves, her mother's criticism whenever Jessica called, her constant comparisons, the subtle ways she'd fostered competition between them since childhood. "He knew her so well," Jessica said softly. "Better than we did, apparently," Emma replied, the anger she'd felt yesterday now redirected. "All these years, I thought you were her favorite." "And I thought you were Dad's favorite," Jessica said, "when really he was just trying to balance Mum's behavior." Mr. Finley knocked gently before entering. "I take it you've reviewed your father's letter. There are additional documents explaining the trust arrangement." As he spread paperwork across the desk, the reality sank in. The hardware store building, the most valuable commercial property in their small town, plus investments had been silently held for them both, with professional management growing the assets for nearly 2 decades. "Your father was quite thorough," Mr. Finley explained. "The trust becomes active immediately, with distributions available at your discretion." Jessica turned to Emma. "I still want to split Mum's estate with you. It's only right." Emma started to protest, then stopped herself. "Let's not make decisions today. We need time to process all this." "Agreed," Mr. Finley said. "Nothing requires immediate action. The house isn't going anywhere." Walking out together, the sisters paused on the sidewalk, autumn sunlight warming their faces. "Coffee?" Jessica suggested tentatively. "There's a lot to talk about." At Rosie's diner, they claimed a corner booth, the same one they'd shared with their parents after church every Sunday before Jessica left for college, and their family rhythms changed forever. "Remember how Dad always ordered the same thing?" Emma said, smiling despite herself. "Chicken fried steak, extra gravy." "And Mom would give him that look," Jessica added, mimicking their mother's disapproving expression. "But she'd still sneak bites from his plate," they ordered, falling into uncomfortable silence until their coffee arrived. "What happened to us, Jess?" Emma finally asked. "We used to be close." Jessica stared into her mug. "Distance, I guess." "Then, habit." "Mom happened to us," Emma corrected, the truth of their father's letter settling in. "I resented you for leaving me to deal with everything here, but now I wonder if you were the smart one, getting away." "Not smart, just running," Jessica admitted. "I knew something wasn't right, but I couldn't name it. I just knew I had to escape. I never considered what that meant for you." "The hardware store. What do you want to do with it?" Emma asked. Jessica looked surprised. "It's yours, Em. You've run it for 15 years, but legally it's ours now, both of us." "And it should stay yours," Jessica insisted. "You built your life around it. I wouldn't know the first thing about running a hardware store." Emma stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "It's profitable, more than Mom ever knew. Another little secret between Dad and me. We expanded the contractor services, added online ordering." "You did that?" Jessica looked impressed. "I had no idea." "There's a lot we don't know about each other," Emma said. "When did we last have a real conversation?" "Dad's funeral," Jessica answered without hesitation. "Before that, maybe when I got married. 8 years, that's terrible." Emma blinked back tears. "Mum would call and tell me how busy you were, how important your job was, that you couldn't be bothered with small-town problems," she told. "You resented my leaving, that you didn't want to hear about my fancy life," Jessica confessed. "I believed her." They spent hours at the diner, sharing stories, Jessica's marketing career struggles, her recent separation from David that she hadn't told their mother about, Emma's brief engagement 3 years ago that ended when her fiancé took a job in Seattle. "Mum said you never mentioned it," Jessica said, horrified. "I would have called, would have been there for you." Emma smiled sadly. "I'm starting to think Mum said a lot of things that weren't true." That evening, they walked through their childhood home together. In the master bedroom, Jessica opened their mother's jewelry box. "She always said this pearl necklace would be yours someday, that it matched your classic style," Emma laughed. "She told me it would go to you, since pearls were wasted on someone who only wore jeans and flannel." They found other contradictions. Promises made separately, histories revised, subtle manipulations that had shaped their perspective of each other. In their mother's desk, a journal revealed the depth of her competitive worldview, her inability to love without ranking, measuring, comparing. "We can't change the past," Emma said finally, "but we can decide what happens next." Over the following weeks, they began dismantling their mother's legacy of division. Jessica extended her visit, working remotely from Michigan while they sorted through the house. Each evening brought new conversations, filling in the gaps of their separate lives. "I'm getting divorced," Jessica admitted one night as they shared wine on the porch swing. "David's been having an affair with his assistant." "Classic, right?" Emma reached for her sister's hand. I'm so sorry. Why didn't you tell Mom? She never liked him anyway. Said I could have done better. I couldn't bear her satisfaction at being right. Jessica sighed. She'd have immediately started suggesting replacements, men with the right connections or bank accounts. That sounds familiar, Emma said. She tried setting me up with the dentist's son last year, kept mentioning his BMW and vacation home. Not his personality or compatibility with you. Those weren't priorities in her matchmaking approach. Emma laughed, then grew serious. I've been thinking about the store. It's yours, Em. I meant that. What if we tried something new? Emma suggested. A partnership but different roles. Your marketing expertise, my operational experience. Jessica looked surprised. You want to work together after everything? Maybe Dad was right. Maybe the best revenge against Mom's manipulation is to become the sisters she tried to prevent us from being. Emma leaned back in the swing. Barrett Sisters Hardware has a nice ring to it. It does, Jessica agreed, smiling. But I'd need to move back, and there's not exactly a booming market for marketing executives in Harper Creek. Remote work is the future, right? You said yourself your company's gone mostly virtual since COVID. Jessica considered this. I could ask for a permanent remote arrangement, or maybe it's time for a change anyway. I've been thinking about consulting. The apartment above the store is empty, Emma offered. It needs updating, but the bones are good. Dad used to talk about converting it to a rental, but never got around to it. Are you sure about this? Working with family can be complicated. We're already complicated, Emma pointed out. But now we know why, and we can do better. They clinked. Glasses, the porch swing creaking gently as they rocked, watching fireflies illuminate the yard where they'd once played as children. By December, the transformation was underway. The hardware store's faded signage came down, replaced with a modern logo Jessica had designed, Barrett Sisters, Hardware and Home, with a stylized image of two hands clasped in partnership. The apartment renovation became their first joint project, Emma managing local contractors, while Jessica selected finishes that balanced modern trends with the building's historic character. Mom would hate these blue cabinets, Jessica remarked one afternoon as they inspected the kitchen installation. Exactly why they're perfect, Emma replied, and they both laughed. The will's aftermath had forced other conversations too. Over Christmas, they divided their mother's belongings not by monetary value, but by meaning, keepsakes chosen for connection, rather than worth. Take this, Emma said, holding out their grandmother's recipe box. You were always better at her apple pie. Jessica shook her head. You should have it. You're here, in the family home. These traditions belong with you. That's Mom talking, Emma pointed out gently. I don't want the recipe box because I deserve it more. I want you to have it because it would make you happy. Jessica accepted it then, tears in her eyes. I thought coming home would feel like failing. Instead, it feels like finally being allowed to be myself, Jessica finished. No expectations, no competition. January brought heavy snow and the grand reopening of the store. Jessica had leveraged her marketing contacts to attract coverage in a regional business magazine, highlighting female entrepreneurship in small-town America. Emma had worried about local reaction to the changes. Harper Creek didn't always embrace innovation, but their father's longtime customers showed up in droves, curious and ultimately supportive. Your dad would be mighty proud, said Walter Jenkins, who'd been buying nails and lumber from Barrett Hardware since before the sisters were born. Both his girls working together, that's what he always wanted. Behind the counter, Emma found herself watching Jessica charming customers introducing new home decor items that complemented the traditional hardware inventory. Her sister's confidence had always seemed like arrogance from a distance. Up close, Emma recognized it as a skill. We I should consider expanding the home section, Emma suggested during a quiet moment. Your displays sold better than I expected, Jessica beamed. I've been researching local artisans who might consign pieces. Plus, I have ideas for workshops, basic home repair for beginners, weekend project clinics. Spring brought unexpected opportunities. A travel magazine featured Harper Creek in a Hidden Midwest Gems article, bringing weekend tourists who wandered into Barrett Sisters for supplies or souvenirs. We should create a line of locally made products, Jessica proposed. Harper Creek branded items, maybe partner with that woodworker who makes those cutting boards? Emma nodded thoughtfully. The tourism angle is smart. Dad always said we should diversify beyond contractor business. They were closing one evening when Emma noticed Jessica staring at their father's old desk in the back office. "What's on your mind?" Emma asked. "I found something today," Jessica said, pulling out a battered leather notebook. It was tucked behind the filing cabinet. "I think it's Dad's project journal." They sat together, paging through sketches and notes, spanning decades, store layouts, product ideas, marketing concepts remarkably similar to what they were now implementing. "Look at this." Emma pointed to a page dated shortly before their father died. The heading read, "Barrett and Daughters," with notes about succession planning and transition strategies. He was planning to bring us both into the business, Jessica realized. Before he had the chance to... Before he died, Emma finished. Another plan Mom derailed. "I wonder what would have happened if he'd lived," Jessica mused. "Would we have worked together back then? Would I have stayed?" Emma shrugged. "No way to know, but we're here now." As summer approached, they established routines that played to their strengths. Emma managed operations and contractors, while Jessica handled marketing and the growing home design section. They disagreed sometimes, Emma favoring caution, Jessica pushing for faster growth, but found their way to compromises. Their mother would never have tolerated. One night, sorting through the final boxes from their mother's house, Emma discovered a hidden compartment in an antique jewelry box. Inside lay a stack of letters bound with faded ribbon. "These are from Dad to Mom," Emma said, reading the first envelope. "Written before they were married." The sisters sat on the floor, carefully unfolding the delicate pages, glimpsing a young man passionately in love with a woman they barely recognized in his descriptions, joyful, spontaneous, kind. "Listen to this," Jessica said. "Your capacity for love amazes me, Margaret. The way you see the best in everyone, how you make each person feel special." Emma frowned. "That doesn't sound like Mom at all." "Maybe it was," Jessica suggested. "Once, before something changed her." In their mother's papers, they eventually found hints, therapy records from the 1970s, before either daughter was born. Notes about Margaret's own childhood, an emotionally abusive mother who pitted Margaret against her sister, with love as the scarce resource they competed to obtain. "She became what hurt her," Emma said quietly, "and never found a way out of the pattern." "But Dad saw it," Jessica pointed out. "He protected us as best he could, and gave us a chance to break the cycle," Emma added. By the 1-year anniversary of their mother's death, Barrett Sisters Hardware and Home had expanded to include a second location in a neighboring town. The local business association named them Entrepreneurs of the Year, with a feature story detailing their journey from estranged siblings to successful partners. For the award ceremony, Emma wore their mother's pearl necklace, and Jessica carried their grandmother's handkerchief in her clutch, not as competitive claims to family legacy, but as shared connections to their past. "Sometimes I feel guilty," Jessica confessed as they prepared their acceptance speech. "Being happier now than when Mom was alive." "I know what you mean," Emma agreed, "but maybe that's part of healing too." Their speech acknowledged their father's vision and their own commitment to community. Neither mentioned the complicated path that brought them together. That story belonged to them alone. Later that evening, They sat in Adirondack chairs behind Emma's house, where Jessica had decided to build a small guest cottage rather than purchase separate property. "Do you ever think about what Dad would say if he could see us now?" Jessica asked. Emma smiled. "He'd probably say, 'I told you so,' in that quiet way of his, no gloating, just satisfaction. Mom would hate what we've done with the store." Jessica laughed. "All that color, the community events." "She'd especially hate that we're getting along," Emma added. "Though I like to think that maybe, somewhere, she's finally free of whatever made her that way." They sat in comfortable silence, fireflies dancing across the yard, just as they had a year before. The future stretched before them, not without challenges, but with a foundation rebuilt on truth rather than manipulation. "Remember how Dad used to say every problem has at least 3 solutions?" Jessica said suddenly. Emma nodded. "His favorite line when we were stuck on homework or fighting over toys." "I've been thinking about that third location we discussed," Jessica continued. "What if we took a different approach? Instead of another hardware store, what about a dedicated home design center? We could showcase local artisans, offer more workshops, maybe even interior design services." Emma considered this. "That's not what Dad would have done." "No," Jessica agreed. "It's what we would do, taking his foundation and building something new." "Barrett Sisters design," Emma tested the words. "I like it." As night deepened around them, they continued sharing ideas, their collaborative vision, expanding beyond what either could have created alone. The inheritance that had nearly divided them permanently had instead forced a confrontation with the past that allowed a new future to emerge. The next morning, Emma arrived at the store early, to find a young woman waiting by the door, nervously clutching a portfolio. "Can I help you?" Emma asked. "I'm Zoe Lewis. I have an appointment with Jessica Barrett about the apprenticeship program." "Of course," Emma smiled, unlocking the door. "The mentorship initiative was her idea, but we're both involved. Come in. She'll be here soon." As Emma gave Zoe a tour, she realized how much had changed in a year. The store their father had built now reflected his daughter's combined vision: traditional hardware seamlessly integrated with contemporary home design, a community hub rather than just a retail space. Jessica arrived with coffee for all 3, greeting the potential apprentice with the warm professionalism that had won over even the most skeptical locals. Watching her sister review Zoe's portfolio, Emma felt a surge of gratitude for their father's foresight. His letter hadn't just equalized their inheritance, it had forced them to confront the dynamics that had shaped their relationship and given them a chance to rebuild. Later, as they closed up shop, Jessica hung a framed copy of their father's letter in the back office. "A reminder," she explained, "of where we started and how far we've come." Emma nodded, thinking of all they'd discovered in the past year, about their parents, about each other, about themselves. "He gave us more than the building or the money," Emma said. "He gave us back our relationship." "The best inheritance of all," Jessica agreed, turning off the lights as they left the store together, walking side by side into the future their father had hoped they would find.